All right, so this is the second half of a conversation with Dylan from the Untrodden podcast. Dylan is a Zoomer, a young Zoomer, and I'm always pleased to talk to that generation. Um, Dylan, you wanted to talk to me about all of my crazy beliefs around things like JFK and RussiaGate and
Hmm.
what else? Twitter files, and Matt Taibbi and the COVID maybe pandemic. You take your pick. What would you like to go after me on first?
I'll just make kind of a general point, and then we can go wherever. I guess like the main point that I would have that I think is consistent in all these cases is that if we both kind of agree, which I think we did at the end of the other half, that we really want to see through things and create a nonpartisan, truth-seeking, civil society engaged, ideally, um, way of seeing things. If that is the case, I guess my basic point would be that's not Matt Taibbi. Okay, that's not Matt Taibbi. That's not Tulsi Gabbard. That's not I don't know, Elon Musk for sure. It's not any of these people. That's my basic point. I think these people are all co-opted, corrupt, also stupid in various ways. And
Hmm.
that's my basic point. I don't know.
All right. I want to defend Matt Taibbi, but I mean, starting there, I don't know where we can go because it's like, what am I supposed to do to defend Taibbi's honor?
You don't have to.
And to claim he's smart. I mean, how many ways do I have to demonstrate that he was smart before I'll convince you? But as far as Tulsi Gabbard, obviously she's the head of the DNI, and she was a Democratic Party politician. So I don't expect her to be the standard bearer of journalistic ethics or neutrality. Same thing. Who was the third? No, Elon Musk.
Elon
Yeah,
Musk.
Elon Musk
Yeah.
was certainly is not someone I would point to as any kind of standard bearer for objectivity or truth telling. But I do think we are lucky that he decided, for whatever reason, to open up the files. And I do not believe that there's any way to show that the Twitter files were that the story that came out of the Twitter files was inaccurate based on cherry picking. The information that we got from the Twitter files was accurate. The story that emerged of government suppression through the DHS was true. And whatever the motivations were that Elon Musk had, don't mitigate that. Don't change that
Sure.
reality. That's what I would say. So, and as far as Matt Taibbi goes, he always struck me as a journalist working in the United States, during a certain
Yeah.
period of time, trying to make a career. I don't believe that his reporting has been demonstrated to be dishonest or faulty. There may be things that he misses. Maybe it doesn't go. It certainly isn't political theory. Doesn't
Sure.
explain the structural reasons for some of the stories. He does make some attempts to, but I wouldn't say he goes far enough. His critique of Marcuse um, wasn't adequate to the reality of Marcuse's life and work, but
Right.
I wouldn't expect it to be from Taibbi. But that, yeah. So that,
Yeah, I mean, I guess since the RussiaGate stuff is the most topical, I guess we can start with that
hmm.
if that's good with you. Because
Yeah, I prefer to start with JFK because I feel like I am really solid ground with JFK. But let's start with RussiaGate.
we
That's fine.
okay, yeah, I mean either way, I don't have um yeah, I guess for RussiaGate, I just feel like nothing was really revealed. It's just like repackaged information that we already knew, and
So
it's
what
not
did we
really
already
anything.
know? What did we
Well,
already know?
yeah, so from what I understand, and I'm not a scholar, I don't have my PhD in this yet, unfortunately, but
Mm-hmm.
I from what I understand, here's one of the problems with all these things. There's so many different levels of claims. You've always got the one guy who makes the strongest claims imaginable, right? That like Russia is Hillary Clinton or something. And then you've got all these different layers of claims underneath that. So, from what I understand, the intelligence community had reason to believe that Russia favored Trump. Some of this was based on what they were very forthcoming about. What they shown directly is like state media, Russian
Mm-hmm.
like open information, and they also had some sources that they did not reveal. What I understand is that they were very forthcoming about this. that there was a bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee in 2020 led by Marco Rubio, where he like sort of corroborated all of that. There's another claim about the voting machines, where Republicans kind of claim that Democrats said the election was stolen by Russian voting machines, but in actual fact, the original report, 2017, said that that was not the case. That the election was not stolen. Russia had shown an interest in voting machines, but they make it very clear that they were not able to change the results of the election. And my understanding is that basically every Democrat was pretty clear that, and to the extent that they were, and I disavow, they were just lying. But I think generally it was known, at least, that the voting machines were not changed. It's the claim really is that, and there seems to be a bipartisan consensus about this, Russia was interested in the campaign. They intervened to the extent that they could with various propaganda, information operations. These are things that they will increasingly do. Other states do this. This is just kind of a known fact about Russia, about China to some extent, maybe India, depending on what we're talking about. This is just a known thing that foreign states do. They integrate where they can. They engage in the information environment, and they have like a multi levels of the operation. This seems to be a bipartisan consensus. So I'm not sure where the conspiracy is, but I know there's more claims. So you can go where you think is the most important
so
part.
that framing is, I mean, I know you weren't very old when 2016
I was around,
happened.
yeah. I was paying attention, but I understand.
But I think if you even though you were maybe 10 or 12 or something like that, you'd probably remember that the actual RUSSIAGATE claim, the reason RUSSIAGATE became a moniker, the reason that it exists, was not because there was this soft claim that Putin wanted to influence the election to help Donald Trump win, but rather that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and Putin.
There was. That's a separate. I should have.
No. Okay. But that is what actually this is about. It is not about what Putin alone wanted. It is about what the claim of collusion. Okay.
Sure.
And what has come out from the Durham report, now new documents from the DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, and the declassification of the annex, or the material that didn't make its way into the original Durham report but was used as the basis for it.
Sure.
What has come out is that, one, starting around 2015, the Clinton campaign had decided to associate Trump with Russia and to claim collusion. Two, Obama was the FBI and the intelligence community received intelligence indicating that Clinton was planning not only to smear Trump with the claim of collusion, but manipulate the intelligence community in support of that effort. And three, that the FBI, the CIA, the intelligence community, and Obama all went along with the Clinton plan to create this impression of collusion, and to use the FBI and the CIA and a special prosecutor as tools to undermine Trump when he went into office. That's the Republican perspective, and it happens to be borne out by the facts. That's what happened. There was no evidence of collusion. No one's ever discovered any evidence of collusion. Well, but you don't agree. So tell me what the evidence for collusion is.
Well, I think we know that there was collusion because there's evidence that they were in contact with Russia, the different officials of the campaign. I mean, we have to remember that the Mueller report was not. I remember when the Mueller report came out, everyone was like, "This is empty. There's nothing in here." I remember that directly. That the Mueller report came out, everyone was like, "Wow, there's no information."
Who was in contact with whom from the campaign?
I mean, you have Paul Manafort.
Manafort, right? That was not about. It was not about coordinating around the campaign. That had to do with his own business interests. So let's look that up. I mean, what was Manafort arrested for?
Well, my understanding is that all of these guys essentially were they committed crimes because they lied about their engagement with Russia, and they were discussing with people about the campaign. I believe he was giving them like internal polling information.
No,
Um,
that didn't happen. I mean, giving who internal polling information?
some like Russian guy who had known ties to the Russian intelligence agency or one of the intelligence agencies.
Okay, let's look that up. Did Manafort give internal polling information to Russian intelligence or Putin?
Well, not Putin. I didn't say he gave it directly to Putin.
Well, this Russian intelligence is good too. I mean, I'm just like, look, the point is there are lots of details, but and what happens is things get conflated. And okay, so Manafort was arrested for his business activity that was thought to be in violation. Right. But the main thing that he was arrested for was making misleading statements to the FBI. So he failed to file reports of foreign bank and financial accounts. It was not that he was coordinating with Russian agents. So now Konstantin Kilnik is the guy who he was sharing some polling information with. So he provided him with internal campaign polling data, including details about Trump's performance in key swing states. And later it was confirmed that by the U.S. Treasury Department that he had provided that campaign information to Russian intelligence services. That was what came out of the 2020 report, I guess. Now that would indicate collusion, you're saying?
Yeah, I think my claim would be that the Trump campaign was not like they were not puppets of Russia or something like that, but that the Trump campaign was directly in contact with and engaging with Russia in a manner that raises questions about like conflict of interest, corruption, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that I don't think that there was a conflict of interest involved in sharing internal polling information.
Okay, well,
or is it? I mean, the question is, did Russia provide material support to any support to the Trump campaign?
We know that they
information
did. We know that they did
so?
because of WikiLeaks, for example.
Yeah, but no, there's a good example of how we don't know that they did, because there's actually been no true. Okay, I'll say it this way. I'll say the strongest claim first. The intelligence around the WikiLeaks never firmly established that the intent was to assist Trump get elected. The early 2016 intelligence claimed the strong, with a strong basis, in fact, claimed that the intent of Russian intelligence was to disrupt and create conditions for questioning the legitimacy of the U.S. state overall, not necessarily to help either candidate get elected.
Okay, well,
but
I mean,
part
I think
of a long-standing.
we're doing the smuggling thing again, though. We're doing the smuggling thing again.
I'm not smuggling anything in.
Well, no, we are, because
I'm not smuggling anything in. I'm telling you what the intelligence community believed before 2017, and before a lot of bad intelligence was used to launch the FBI Crossfire Hurricane investigation, and to create CIA documents based on very little evidence, or no real evidence at all, at the request of, it looks like it was at the request of Obama around in December of 2016. So no, I'm not smuggling something in. I'm telling you that the idea that Putin had the ambition to influence the U.S. election in terms of outcome is wrong, according to U.S. intelligence. And those reports and those more senior intelligence officials within the Biden administration or within the government at that time were suppressed. Their opinions were suppressed in favor of evidence based on things such as the Steele dossier and hearsay and very bad evidence
Well, it's not okay.
at
Well,
the time. And that is not my opinion. That is what you can look up if you pay attention to the declassified documents that are coming out now.
When I say you're smuggling something in, what I'm talking about is if Russia was trying to discredit the U.S. state, what electoral consequence do you think that's going to have? You don't know?
I don't believe Russia had the ambition to have an electoral consequence, but they had a long-standing policy of undermining the legitimacy of the U.S. state, regardless of who won these elections, in order to help breed dissent and dissatisfaction in the country overall, both on the right and the left.
Okay, now who do we think would get elected in the 2016 election if there was a immense amount of dissent towards the state?
Looking back, it may look like it would be Trump, but in general, if there's an immense amount of dissatisfaction on both the right and the left, it would undermine both parties.
I think we should remember the election. I mean, I remember Trump in debates, and he would just be like, the Iraq War was stupid. Why were we there? Right? I mean, he would just say things like that. And what was that? That was anti-establishment and anti-Republican establishment, explicitly. Like, not just, Democratic establishment. It was against the Republican establishment. That's what Trump was. I mean, we have to remember at the time, Trump was a, extremely anti-establishment candidate. He was seen as an outsider. He really was. He was seen as this crazy, unhinged freak, and he was seen as an opposition to all the Republicans who were against him. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. We can also forget this, since they're such hacks now. They were always hacks there, but still, they were all strongly against Trump, and we should be clear that they were against Trump because he was anti-state, and they were pro-state, and they were pro-establishment. So I think what I would say you're smuggling in is, it seems incredibly obvious to me that Russia would have an interest in undermining the state, and Russia having an interest in Trump winning are one and the same almost. I mean, these are highly intertwined.
That is not true, because Russia didn't have the ambition to influence the election, nor the capacity to. The scale of the intervention was small. In terms of the clickbait farming, that is the primary really solid piece of evidence of any kind of interference. And the stated opinion of Putin at the time, and the intelligence community also claimed this, was that he expected Hillary Clinton to win. He did not
expecting someone to win and preferring someone are completely unrelated claims, right? I mean, they have
true, but we're not talking about what the subjective opinion of Putin was. We're talking about what was actually tried, and whether or not it was collusion. And the level, when you're talking about collusion, you're talking about some fraud from Manafort, and mostly perjury when he was investigated by the FBI at the time on the basis of an investigation founded upon evidence that simply would never have been used in any other case. Certainly was not used when it came to the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and through a process, the FISA process, which was a rubber stamp process, that even then they they lied to the FISA court about the basis of the foundational basis for the investigation. The entire investigation was put forward on false premises. They basically entrapped Manafort, and they'd already were tapping, spying on the campaign, tapping the phone lines and what have you. And so it was a kind of sting operation against Manafort, which you're now claiming proves Russian collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian intelligence community.
So
it's just absurd, and you just completely ignore the fact that, in fact, that there's evidence that the Clinton campaign had started to this effort to smear Trump with collusion in 2015, you're completely ignoring the fact that the FBI knew that before, or at least had good reason to suspect it, did not investigate the intelligence that came into that effect, and instead began an investigation into Trump based on what they knew at the time was specious evidence, evidence that didn't warrant an investigation. This is all this, and so, and also there was never any evidence of collusion that came out of any of the actual investigations, like the Mueller prosecutor.
I mean, that's just not true. I mean, there are multiple people in jail for communicating with Russia frequently and having like inappropriate dealings. I mean, this is just true, right?
Well, you can say communicating with Russia and then conflate that with a coordinated effort to influence the campaign. Those are not the same thing.
Well,
again,
I just want
Manafort's dealings with Russia had to do with business deals. I suppose he shared some polling data, but to what effect and to
so
what
so you think like, do you think
know.
he was just like, so would your argument be that he was just having business deals and then they asked him what the polling numbers were and they were like, yeah, I mean, you know, we're friends, like we're hanging out, sure, I'll show you. Like, is that your argument, that they never discussed anything campaign? It's possibly true. I guess like another issue I have here is, if we were talking about Hunter Biden or JFK, I do not think you would have this much charitability towards the actors there. I don't think you'd be like, yeah, I mean, you know, Hunter Biden, he was just hanging out doing business, because that is what he was doing. And you need more evidence, like the fact that he shared polling data in Manafort's case, or that they lied, which Joe Biden did not, Hunter Biden did not do, or that WikiLeaks happened and that was a
No, I would say that with the Biden example is a perfect example, because Biden, Hunter Biden, was not colluding with the Ukrainian state to change the outcome of an election, or even necessarily to immediately change policies in the U.S. government. He was using his father's political power in order to make money for himself. And there's corruption there, certainly, possibly corruption that should have risen to the level of an arrest of Hunter Biden, but okay, it would certainly not demonstrate a conspiracy between the Biden campaign and Ukrainian state.
Okay, so if you agree
and the same thing is true with Manafort, which is that Manafort was attempting to demonstrate his basically his viability and his importance and value to business partners who might want to have the ear of a future Trump president. And he was trying to say, listen, take note, there's a good chance for this guy. We should make this deal. This guy has a shot. Don't write him off. That's not the same thing as saying, here's the information that the KGB requested so that we can coordinate in
sure, I agree, it's not the same.
Undermine that. And that is the claim. That second claim is the claim that
no, it's
was
not.
Behind behind the Crossfire Hurricane investigation and the Mueller investigation. The claim was not about Manafort alone. The claim was about basically Trump as a Manchurian candidate, working for and alongside Putin, and that was the justification for these investigations, and that was the claim that was being made in the American press, and it was the basis for those investigations. That was a claim that Obama made too. That there was an effort from Putin, and the Putin wanted to support Trump, and that his efforts to influence the election were all in support of Trump, which again is not what the intelligence
I feel like
said at the time.
I feel like you're playing loose with facts, which you said you didn't want.
I'm playing completely straightforwardly with facts.
No, because
all the facts I'm pointing forward are correct. None of the things I'm saying are playing fast and loose with the facts.
Okay, well, let me just make the argument, make the example. Claiming that Trump is a Manchurian candidate and Obama saying that Putin wanted Trump they're not related at all. Like they're not related at all.
They are related. They're definitely related.
Well, they're related. They're related
They're
in the same
definitely
sense.
related.
I mean, they're related in the same sense that a hurricane is related to a thunderstorm, but they're very different things. Because
If Putin did not want to help Trump get elected, then there's no way that Trump could have colluded with him to get elected, right?
True,
if we can say
but
that's the case. And at the time, Obama knew that the evidence for collusion and the evidence for Putin wanting Trump to win in a way that, like, attempting to influence the campaign on Trump's behalf, was negligible to none. And he went ahead and made those claims in the media anyway.
I don't think that's an accurate assessment of his position, but I do think Obama was not saying.
It is an accurate assessment of his position.
Okay, well,
that
we have to establish
that can be verified. Go read the Durham report and the DNI documents.
I am
this
familiar.
Is not me making stuff up. Okay,
well,
what does the DNI documents say that Trump Obama did?
The argument.
Okay,
well, I still haven't been able to make my previous points fully. So, claiming that Trump is a Manchurian candidate, that like he's literally just a Putin puppet, that is just obviously never been substantiated. I've never believed that. I don't think anyone reasonable has believed that. I think there was never any reason to have 100% confidence in that. Maybe you could have theorized it, or you wanted to believe it or something, sure, but there was never any evidence given for that. And Obama saying, you know what, I think the Russians are influencing our elections and I think they prefer Trump, is an entirely different, fairly substantiated claim than the unsubstantiated, crazy claim that which would be really irresponsible for him to make, that Trump is just a Putin puppet. Those are completely worlds apart. We have to distinguish.
The claim that Hillary Clinton did make repeatedly, and by the way, they also, we have to put this in the context of, I'm not saying that, but Obama literally said Trump is Putin's puppet. What he said was that everyone knows that Putin is worked to influence the campaign on Trump's behalf.
Why do you think that's not true?
Because the intelligence reports that came out before the election,
right,
and after, that suggested that there was an attempt to influence the campaign in the direction of Trump, were based on very inadequate evidence. For instance, the Steele dossier and the more senior intelligence reports that were verified, that came from Russian specialists in the CIA and the FBI, contradicted the bullshit claims from fake intelligence that was used.
How did they contradict? Two questions. How did they contradict?
They claimed
and number two,
that Putin was trying to influence the election in support of Trump, but rather that, as always, the efforts that were made, which were rather minimal, were aimed at, as was a long-standing approach to the United States from Russia, creating dissent and disharmony on both the right and the left.
Well, we can return to that because I don't think we resolved that enough. We can return to that. But second question, how do we know that the Steele dossier was the only source for that claim? How do we know that?
It's not the only source, it's the best one.
And how do we know
the other because of what was declassified by the DNI around the CIA intelligence reports that were written up, and what Brennan said when he was confronted by his underlings for using bad information to set up the 2017 CIA intelligence reports, which was, it rings true, doesn't it? And also, here is a conversation that I had I can't source, and here's an unsourced email. Those are the other kinds of information that were used to justify the CIA's intelligence reports, other than the Steele dossier. So what you have is no evidence at all, really, on one hand, and a fictitious report written up by the Clinton campaign as an October surprise on Trump during the campaign. That was the evidence for the CIA's estimation. Those senior officials within the CIA that knew something about Russia disagreed with the conclusions based on the bullshit evidence that Brennan pushed forward anyway, and that was known at the time. It's not as though Obama didn't know the reality of the CIA's estimation of the actual threat or of influence from Russia, he did. So what you have was a politically motivated bullshit investigation on within two intelligence agencies, which was done in spite of having received a warning earlier in July of 2016 that the Clinton campaign was planning on manipulating the FBI and the CIA as become an arm of her campaign. Now that I will say this about that warning from the intelligence that came in July, that was intercepted Russian intelligence. Okay, it was not like Russia didn't say, here's some intelligence, we want to warn you. No. But it was intercepted Russian intelligence. It was the Russians' own estimation of what was going on in the United States that then we became aware of by intercepting that. And while Durham later on did verify that the evidence the Russians had appeared to be valid, he couldn't corroborate that the emails quoted in the intelligence report were literally the same emails that came out of the open Society Foundation or Sources Foundation, which was some of the reasons why the Russians, they had hacked and intercepted Open Society emails. And what he could find are emails which were very similar from a different person within this Open Society, not the ones that were credited to a different person. But anyway, the point is, it looked good enough for him to say that there was some certainty, that there was some validity to the claims, but it wasn't absolutely verified. That's Durham. What we can also know is that the FBI did not investigate the intelligence, did not start up any kind of an attempt to verify the possibility that there was a Clinton plan itself, but rather did not investigate that and did start to investigate Trump's supposed collusion with Russia. So that's what's been exposed recently. This is what's coming out of the DNI documents. This is what's coming out of the Durham declassification, and this is was known in 2023 after the Durham report was released.
Okay, so yeah, I guess first of all, we'll return to that original claim, because I still find this to be absolutely impossible. That you think.
Well, I don't. Why would you find it impossible? I don't get. I mean, like, you can claim that I've misread it, but it's like, what's in the documents? So what are you talking about? It's impossible. It certainly is possible. All these.
Well, no, I'm getting to what's impossible. It seems absolutely impossible to me that you don't see the overlap between wanting to delegitimize the American state and wanting Trump. I mean, these are so clearly overlapping. To pretend like Russia was just like agnostic. They're like, the
intelligence in the intelligence community before the 2016 election and after indicated that Putin did not create an effort to influence the election on the level of trying to pick and choose who won. Whether or not the unintended or hopeful consequences of undermining the U.S. state altogether and the establishment in the United States might get Trump elected is a completely different question. The question is not about what Putin might have wanted. The question was there evidence to support the idea that Trump and Putin, or Trump and Russian intelligence, were working together to try to get Trump elected? That's the question, not this secondary one of what's in the mind of Putin. That is not what the question is.
No, that is the question, because what this...
No, it isn't. It simply isn't, and it's not serious to say that it is. That is not a serious position. That is a position based on some weird idealist focus on the character of the players and what they thought, rather than what they did and what the actual threat was. Intelligence communities do threat assessments. They don't do psychological investigations into the secret beliefs and wants and desires of individual people within the state.
So the report makes it clear that their concern is Putin's intent to influence American election results that particularly manifested in a preference for Trump. I mean, that's what it says.
The intelligence community said before 2016 that the degree to which there was any interference in the election was limited to the same level that had been and with the same goal that the Russians had in a long-standing way, which was simply to undermine the legitimacy of the state in the minds of as many dissidents as possible on both the right and the left. That's essentially what it said. And that's the claim you should go after, not this thing about, oh, well, if Putin wanted to just, to undermine the legitimacy of the U.S. state, therefore he wanted Trump. That's a very, very weak argument, and it conflates two things that aren't the same.
It's not a weak argument. It's literally
totally,
in the minds of every single intelligence official, Obama, Hillary Clinton.
No, that's
every single
wrong.
one of these
Intelligence
people sees it this
officials
way.
did not care what the secret desires of Putin were. They didn't. They weren't. What they were concerned with was the capacity, the capabilities of the Russian state, and its actual aims and policies, what it was intending to do, what it tried to do, not what it secretly would like to see happen. The assessment of the intelligence community was that Russia didn't have the capacity nor the desire to influence the election, that instead they were simply maintaining the long-standing policy of trying to undermine legitimacy of the United States through their propaganda efforts. And that was the assessment. Those things are different, Dylan. Those are not the same thing.
Okay, so do you think, don't you think that if you're assessing the threat, that you would care about like exactly how that threat is manifesting? Don't you think you would care about that a little bit?
The threat would not be manifesting in the psychology or the hopes and dreams of Putin. It would be manifesting in the actual policies, the money being spent, the efforts being made. That's where it would manifest.
And those, and the money spent and the policies would hint at a certain preference, which helps you to understand where exactly the threat is coming from. No?
No. The threat would not be the scale of what was done. Okay, indicates that the effort was not being made to influence the outcome of the election. That was what the intelligence report said, that they did not find there was an effort from Putin to influence the outcome of the election. That was not their conclusion. That is a completely separate question from who Putin would have liked to see win. Look, I might want, right, to win $1 million in the lottery, right? But if I don't go and buy a ticket, then what I want doesn't matter. And the same thing's true here. He didn't buy the ticket to try to influence the election. There was no effort to influence the election.
Okay, so WikiLeaks, social media influence, like none of these were influencing the election?
Social media influence, no, absolutely not. If you want to go talk about the WikiLeaks thing, well, the question becomes there, one, what is the evidence that WikiLeaks was Russian? We have to examine that. And two, even if WikiLeaks was aimed at, it was Russian, was the hope that it would skew the election for Trump? Now, I would say you have the strongest case with WikiLeaks because of the timing of its release, but nonetheless, even in the context of WikiLeaks, the intelligence community didn't believe Putin was trying to influence the election. That was not what the Russian experts said. That's not what was being claimed. And there was certainly no evidence that anyone in the Trump campaign knew about the hacking of WikiLeaks in advance, nor coordinated with Russia about the timing of the release. And there's not even much clear evidence that Russia had anything to say about when the WikiLeaks documents were released. We don't really know the chain of custody between whoever it was that hacked the DNC and how it got to Julian Assange. The evidence there is not good certainly not for collusion, and not even for the claim that Putin wanted to influence the election. But I will grant you that if you want to claim that actually, no, there is evidence that he was trying, then I guess the fact that if you claim that WikiLeaks definitely, that information definitely came from Russian hacks and was timed to influence the election, then you can start to make a claim in that direction. But the evidence that it was actually hacked by Russian agents is sketchy. It came out of the DNC was a hack was evaluated by CrowdStrike, and no intelligence community ever got any. The FBI didn't get any access to the actual servers. There was never any claim that they actually saw the hack happen, or could claim with certainty where it came from. That CrowdStrike didn't make that claim. There is evidence that the information that ended up in WikiLeaks was not the result of a hack, but came from a thumb drive. The files were transferred via thumb drive. It's an open question.
Wait, so did the thumb drive just like magically appeared in someone's hands? I mean, what do you think that means? Like the thumb drive means there's.
I don't know. It could have been an
hacking.
internal. It didn't
hacking.
Necessarily. It doesn't. There were no Russian agents' thumbprints on any thumb drive that was.
Okay, and that's great. And Hitler's thumbprints weren't on Holocaust victims either. That's great. That doesn't mean anything. That's
no, the
not
thumbprint.
Meaningful.
The thumb drive means that it wasn't hacked by an external computer or some hacker in some other part of the world. A thumb drive would have meant that it had been plugged into the server somewhere and the data extracted locally.
Okay, so you know that the thumb drive was taken from the local server directly. You know that? How would you know that?
They know that based on the speed of the transfer of information.
Okay.
That they can see in the data that was then
sure. Well, even if it was someone who accessed it directly, that would still count as a hack. I mean, hacking is a very complicated, broad.
Definitely a hack doesn't count as a Russian one.
It could absolutely still have connections to Russia, and Russia could have had interest.
It could, but there's at that point, if it's a thumb drive, there's no evidence of any Russian hacking, because the evidence of Russian hacking has to do with an external hack and access to the servers, not an internal one. So if the data was not extracted during that hack that they did spot from an external source, but was instead taken by someone within the organization, then at that point, you don't have any evidence that the Russians actually got the WikiLeaks data.
Okay, so again, like we know that the Russians wanted to undermine the state.
No, we know that they wanted. Yes, of course, they always want to undermine the Russians, the U.S. state. Yes.
Okay, that's great, and we know that Hillary is a establishment state anti-Russian candidate, and we know that Trump was a wild card, and we know that many Trump officials had engagements with Russia, that they lied about it, that they often went to jail for it. I mean, these are.
Why are you okay? Yeah, we know that's this last thing, especially very vague statement, totally trading on innuendo and insinuation, not any kind of real evidence at all. Okay. Yeah. Many Trump campaign members had some relationship with people from Russia. All right. And business dealings in Russia. That's your evidence here of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian state to try to get Trump elected. That's not good evidence, especially when you consider what the evidence that they actually used to launch the FBI investigation and the CIA reports and the Mueller campaign actually were. They didn't use Manafort's business deals as the evidence for the FBI investigation. They didn't use the kind of argument you're making to justify the intelligence community investigating Trump or spying on him. That didn't happen. That evidence came out of the investigation that was already ongoing based on bullshit evidence. Okay, they basically went on a fishing expedition within the Trump administration or Trump campaign to try to find justifications for continuing the investigation. If you did the same thing for the Clinton campaign, you would find ample opportunities of people who were in the Clinton administration who had ties and business dealings with Russia. And if you want to, just play this game, there was a lot of evidence of trading influence for money within the Clinton campaign. That there was a scandal around that. None of that proved, by the way, that they were colluding to change the outcome of the election with any foreign state. So, but yeah, there was a big scandal at the same time with the Clinton Foundation using its influence to gain donations from foreign dignitaries and members of state. Okay, so the kind of evidence you're using here is entirely hypocritical, and you're by the way, you're refusing to take up the main points that were released through primary documents and from the DNI and the Durham report and the declassification of the Durham report. There's actual legitimate intelligence being shared with the American public, legitimate intelligence, validated intelligence, verified intelligence, where we can judge it for ourselves. How good is it? We're not being told, oh, it's great, and it turns out it's based on fictitious dossiers written up by the Clinton campaign and the fever dream of John Brennan.
Okay, so what claims am I not engaging with? What am I just like
The fact
conveniently
that okay, one, that the Steele dossier was written up by the Clinton campaign and used to launch the FBI investigation into Trump. That they lied to the FISA court as to the basis of the evidence for Trump collusion in order to get the power to spy on the campaign from the government. That's one piece of information you're ignoring. Two, the fact that Obama was informed of a plan to manipulate the FBI and the CIA, and instead of investigating that or suggesting to the intelligence community that they should look into that, he told them to cancel a presidential daily briefing that indicated that the threat from, well, this is later on, but what he did was he cooperated in various ways with the attempt to falsely give the American public the perception that Trump was in some way in cahoots, colluding with a foreign power and Putin to try to steal the election. That's what happened instead. So you're ignoring those two key parts of the story. Basically, here they are in a nutshell. There was never any good evidence, never enough to warrant the investigation into Trump by the standards of the FBI and the CIA itself, and there was internal dissent based on the lack of quality evidence. And two, the FBI and the CIA knew that there was a good chance anyway that this was all a manipulation from the Clinton campaign. And then the third piece of the puzzle would be the fact that the evidence they did end up using was known to come from the Clinton campaign.
Tulsi Gabbard says that that's where all the information came from and that it was
Tulsi Gabbard says that she, as a DNI, has had access to the CIA's internal records and that the records show that this is the case. Also, the declassification of the Durham report is similarly based on having access to the intelligence reports that went on at the time and the staff and the ability to investigate and try to validate and verify the claims of those intelligence reports. So no, it's not a claim from Tulsi Gabbard. It's Tulsi Gabbard saying, here is the evidence that we found, and take a look.
Okay, so where in the evidence does it prove that the intelligence agencies just completely fabricated this and they did not have like real reason to believe that Russia was involved?
Okay, all right. So in the Durham report, it was shown that was in 2003, 2023. It was shown that the FBI began investigating Trump on the basis of a conversation in a bar between an Australian ambassador and a low-level Trump campaigner that, by the way, was inflated and misreported on in the press, and the Steele dossier. And that the FBI knew that by the standards of FBI investigation, it was known that did not warrant a full-scale investigation. But nonetheless, one was begun. That's in the Durham report. And there it is, a document that is fairly long and with quite a lot of material justifying that conclusion. But what I would point you to is the Durham report, the initial Durham report, to demonstrate that Crossfire Hurricane was not started on the kind of basis that a normal FBI investigation would be started on, and that it was done after the FBI had received a warning through intelligence apparatus of the United States that Clinton was attempting or might be planning to attempt to manipulate the intelligence community as a part of her campaign.
Okay, so why would it not be acceptable to investigate that when you have multiple reports coming in about this potentially being an issue? Why is that not something to investigate?
The reports that came in were, one, unvalidated, unverified, and from a disreputable source, Steele, that was known to be, that he himself said were based on hearsay and composites, and which the FBI's own eventual analysis claimed it was basically disreputable and worthless. And two, because the other form of evidence didn't indicate anything, couldn't be interpreted as being damning evidence. So that the reason why the Crossfire Hurricane investigation wasn't warranted was because there wasn't sufficient evidence to warrant investigating. There was no basis for the investigation.
Okay, the Durham report concluded that essentially the FBI wasn't as strict about.
Yeah, that's a way to undersell it. They didn't.
No, that is. It's not.
Any
okay,
evidence.
it was undersold.
They had no evidence to justify.
If it was undersold,
they had no evidence to justify starting an
undersold,
investigation.
If it was undersold by Durham himself. That's who undersold it.
Okay, what did he say?
He essentially recommended that the FBI change policies and make sure that they're enforced more specifically, because there should have been a preliminary investigation, a more thorough investigation before, before they go all the way.
Fair enough. So Durham did undersell his findings in the way that he spoke, but that's right. I'm not saying that the facts are wrong. I'm just saying I would say it much more strongly, and it would mean exactly the same thing. Yeah, they should have had a preliminary investigation rather before launching an investigation on the kinds of evidence that don't warrant an investigation. Let's look at the evidence again that they had to start Crossfire Hurricane. One, a conversation where a guy said to an ambassador in Australia, an underling in the Trump administration, said, "We hear Russia has dirt on Hillary Clinton, and we're very confident that we're going to win." That's the first piece of the puzzle, and that's the full extent of it. And two, a dossier written up by Clinton, paid for, paying a guy who the FBI didn't use as an asset anymore because he was disreputable. Those are the two pieces of evidence used to justify the beginning of Crossfire Hurricane.
So the Steele dossier had nothing to do with Crossfire Hurricane at all.
It did. It was the only evidence they had other than a conversation that meant nothing. That was the only two pieces of evidence they had. And what happened was they started the investigation based on nothing, then used the Steele dossier to get a FISA warrant to start spying on Trump.
Okay, so you agree that the investigation was started not because of the Steele dossier?
Based on nothing. Based on just right. They started the investigation based on absolutely nothing. Then they used the Steele dossier to get FISA warrants.
Okay, and why was it not justified before the Steele dossier to open an investigation, open Crossfire Hurricane?
Because there are higher standards of evidence than merely wanting to investigate someone that the FBI is supposed to abide by in order to justify an investigation. You have to have enough evidence to warrant the intrusion and the use of power. Like, you wouldn't want the local police to start an investigation into you as a potential murderer because someone heard someone else say somewhere that maybe you hated someone and wanted them dead, without any evidence of anything else than that. Just like there was a report that someone overheard someone make that claim about you in a bar. You wouldn't want the police to start a full-scale murder investigation into you based on that evidence, would you?
So my understanding is that there was reason to believe that Trump campaign officials, George Papadopoulos, Flynn, Manafort, were engaging with Russia, and this was enough factual basis to possibly constitute a national security threat that was worth investigating.
Well, what does it mean to engage with Russia?
So,
I mean, are you saying that
obviously
that was the basis of the Crossfire Hurricane being
that
opened up?
that
Because
was
Crossfire
exact-
Hurricane was not an investigation into possible corrupt business dealings between George Papadopoulos and
No,
Russia.
it was an
investigation
investigation with Russian officials who would likely be seen as working with the Russian state and thus having an influence in the Trump campaign and thus posing a national security threat for the campaign of one of the candidates to be directly engaging with people who were directly in ties with the Russian
When
state.
did they start to get the information about those relations, before or after Crossfire Hurricane was opened up?
It was the reason that Crossfire Hurricane was opened up.
Where are you getting that information? Because my understanding, having read the Durham report, was that the basis for the investigation was a conversation between an ambassador and a low-level Trump campaign staffer, not information about the business deals that some Trump campaigners had with Russians.
Right. So this is testimony from Horowitz, who was the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Justice. And his testimony was that they opened up the investigation due to sufficient individual investigations or sufficient reason to believe that those individuals were engaging with Russia and that this was enough.
Let me read you page 10, the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. Within 10 days after opening Crossfire Hurricane, the FBI opened full investigations on 4 members of the Trump campaign team: George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, and Michael Flynn. So the investigation into those people started after the Crossfire Hurricane.
Right. The investigation into those people, but the information about those people came before the full investigation, right?
Okay. All right.
You can have information about those 4 people before opening a full investigation. I mean, that's the point.
Well, okay. So what information did they have again before about those people?
And
what page are you on so I can look at let's look at it together. What page are you on so I can?
I'm not looking at the Crossfire Hurricane. I'm looking at the testimony from the Horowitz.
From where?
I can.
What's that? Who was he testifying to at that time?
Looks like the Senate Committee on Homeland Security.
Oh, in 2020.
2019, December 2019.
Okay, so the Durham report came out in 2023. Okay, so okay, let's look at let's look to see if there's contradiction between what was told to the Senate and what was exposed by the Durham report. All right, that would be worth investigating. So who was it that it was Horowitz?
Yeah, who's the Inspector General. So his job is to hold the Department of Justice accountable to itself.
All right, so the Inspector General didn't launch Crossfire Hurricane, did he?
No, but he would be aware of why it was launched.
He would be aware of why it was launched. Okay, so when did what did he say exactly in that testimony? Read it again.
I mean, his specific quote here is that we concluded that the quantum of information articulated by the FBI to open individual investigations was sufficient to satisfy the low threshold established by the department and the FBI.
Okay, right. So this is not about opening Crossfire Hurricane.
Right, but again,
it is not.
It was
Dylan, it is not about opening Crossfire Hurricane. It is about getting the authority to launch investigations into those individuals after Crossfire Hurricane was opened up. Right?
what he says about the Crossfire Hurricane itself was that a decision was
That's
made.
yes or no before you tell me something else that he
Yes,
said.
those
So my
not the
claim
exact
was,
same thing. I
so
understand that.
you were claiming before that Crossfire
Okay.
Hurricane was.
So this is like a very basic, very basic piece
Dylan,
of
it's very basic.
information.
Dylan, it's
Very
very basic.
basic.
You
I
were
agree with
claiming
you.
before
I
that
agree with
Crossfire
you. You're
Hurricane
very right. You're
started
completely, totally right. I concede. You're completely right.
because
You
of
win.
the
You got it.
evidence that
You owned me. I
there
agree.
was against those 4 individuals. That's what
But
started Crossfire Hurricane. Now we're finding out that I was correct. That no, they
did not
started
claim
those
that.
investigations. You did claim that.
I
You
did
did
not.
claim that. You did.
I
I'll
did not claim
rewind it
that.
and I'll show it again at this point. You did claim that.
Okay, that's
We
great.
were debating why
Okay, well,
Crossfire Hurricane was started.
you own me, but you
Not-
could just hear what I have to say to
No,
explain.
yeah, but I want you
the point.
to tell me the yes or no. Did Crossfire Hurricane start because of evidence against those 4 individuals that then warranted the Crossfire Hurricane investigation to start, or did the investigation of those 4 individuals start after Crossfire Hurricane had already begun? And was that what Horowitz was speaking to in his testimony?
The investigations, the full investigations, started after, but information relating to them existed before and was involved
Horowitz
in the
didn't
decision.
say that. Is not Horowitz didn't claim that in what you read to me. So where are you getting that?
Okay. So he says that some guy named Bill decided to open Crossfire Hurricane after a consensus was reached among senior FBI officials and that it was in compliance with policies, and they did not find evidence that there was political bias. And although the information in possession at the time was limited, it hit the low threshold established, and this was reason to open Crossfire Hurricane. So this particular testimony does not identify what the actual evidence was. Yes.
Right. And I'm telling you that the Durham report from 2023 demonstrates that Horowitz is wrong about whether or not the threshold was met. And in fact, that is the conclusion of the Durham report, as you read it to me earlier, that the threshold was not met. Okay. And also, Horowitz did not claim that the business activity of those 4 individuals was the justification for opening a Crossfire Hurricane, which was what you were telling me it was just a little bit ago. So no, it was not based on the evidence against Papadopoulos or Manafort or any of those. That's not why the Crossfire Hurricane was opened up. It was opened up based on a conversation between a low-level Trump campaigner and an ambassador from some Australian ambassador. That's evidence 1, which was nothing, because the Trump campaign person said literally nothing of any import. And then 2, the dossier. That was the basis for opening up Crossfire Hurricane. Okay. And it was done after the FBI had received a warning that the Clinton campaign was going to try to manipulate the FBI for political purposes.
Okay, so I need to see the argument that the FBI had absolutely no idea about any of these individuals until they opened Crossfire Hurricane.
No, you don't. You don't need to see that, because you're just grasping at straws. The official record shows. Okay. The official record shows that the investigations. Hold on. That the investigations into those 4 individuals occurred after Crossfire Hurricane was opened up. You want to read the minds and look for motivations? Fine. But the fact is that they did not use that information to justify opening up the campaign. If they had good information against those 4 individuals, they would have used it. They didn't. They did not use that as a justification for opening up Crossfire Hurricane. And when you quote me Horowitz talking about those individuals, you're talking about the investigation after the fact. Okay? And Horowitz was wrong about them meeting the threshold for an investigation. Durham demonstrates that in the Durham report. So, and you're not addressing the fact that they did have an obligation to at least look into the possibility that they were being manipulated after they received an intelligence warning to that effect before they started Crossfire Hurricane. You can say, oh, they might have thought about this. Someone might have known. They did not use it as a justification to open Crossfire Hurricane.
Once again, George Papadopoulos was one of the people who was investigated fully. and information relating to him was the reason that Crossfire Hurricane was opened up, correct?
No.
Yes, that's correct.
Where are you getting that from?
So the Australian thing that you mentioned, that piece of
George
information.
Papadopoulos was that guy, right? He's the low level.
He was indeed that guy.
Okay, right. Okay.
So there is. So once again, as I just for the audience, I've been trying to establish that there was a connection between the guys that were investigated and the initial evidence. I was trying to establish that connection, and you have refused to let me make that connection, which was true because you think I'm making some like elementary error where I thought the investigation.
You definitely are making an elementary error. But okay, Papadopoulos, he was the one who said,
right,
the Russians have some dirt.
Right.
Right. And that was the basis of opening up the Crossfire Hurricane campaign investigation.
Right.
Right. Not high enough threshold to ever open up an investigation, according to Durham and Durham.
Okay. Other FBI officials
and
said
also
it was
the
enough
FBI
to open an investigation.
Yeah, right.
You know what? I do have this one question. Why do we think it's a bad thing for the government to investigate itself?
I think it's a bad thing for the state to investigate parties, political parties, because the political parties are based in society. They're not part of the state. When the state can investigate political parties on spurious evidence based on political motivations, then the state power, which includes the power of the FBI, people with guns, people who have the ability to lock you up, can then be used for political purposes to suppress the politics coming out of society.
Right, sort of like what Donald Trump is doing right now. But that aside, I mean,
you can't put that aside. That's my reason.
Okay, but I just don't. Okay, so there's a disagreement about whether the initial opening of the investigation was proper.
There isn't
the investigation.
There isn't a disagreement.
Okay, Durham is God. Durham knows facts. Got it. Okay.
No, there isn't a disagreement if you look to what the standards are. And have been, and the standards that were not applied during Crossfire Hurricane.
Okay, why is Horowitz less to be believed than Durham?
Because Horowitz was well, first of all, Horowitz's claim isn't that the standards were actually met.
It is. He did say that.
No, he didn't. Read it again.
Yes, he did.
Read it again.
I will read it again, and I will be correct, and that will be, we're just wasting
time. First time. If you're correct, it'll be the first time. Go ahead.
I'm sure. Okay, sorry. Let me scroll up. In light of the low threshold established by Department and FBI predication policy, we found that the Crossfire Hurricane was opened for an authorized investigative purpose and with sufficient factual predication. So he just there said that it was sufficient. Yes.
Right. No. Right. He said we found.
Yes, that's what the Inspector General does.
But it was right. It was, and what was the low threshold? Right.
Whatever the FBI.
Yeah, I mean, try to. Let's say that it turns out that the actual rules and regulations and the threshold was not met.
Okay.
What would, if you say I found that it did meet those, that threshold, you're not making a factual claim about the threshold.
Right. And neither
you're making a claim about your judgment at the time.
Based on the factual claim.
No. You can be wrong.
Okay, and so can Durham be wrong.
No. Yeah. Yes, Durham could be wrong, but Durham didn't say I found that this at the time met the threshold. He said he recommends that some efforts be made to make sure that the thresholds would be met because they were not met. Okay, that's a factual claim and a recommendation based on the factual claim. The fact that this being claimed by Horowitz is about his own internal judgment, not about the actual threshold. He doesn't say, if he wanted to say that, what he could say is, here are the standards for evidence, and here's the evidence that met those standards. He doesn't make that claim. He makes a claim about what they did and why and what their judgment was. Now, you can't go after him on that because they can't mind read. They can't tell him, oh, you know what? No, you knew better.
What is your claim then?
My
That we
point,
just can't know anything ever? Like what is the point?
no, my point is that when you have to read you have to look at the way they couch these phrase, what they say carefully, because you have to know what they're actually claiming. He's not claiming that the evidence reached the threshold. He's claiming that they decided, they found that it did.
Is that a meaningful difference to you?
Absolutely. Because if you I'll give
can
you
he step outside of his soul and like
I'll give you an
reflect on it
example.
as an impartial
I'll give you
observer?
an example. Tucker Carlson was alleged to have spread lies about the 2020 election,
right?
On Fox News.
Absolutely.
And he was to be found guilty of that, of fraud. He had to be shown that he knew.
Right.
If he said, I found there was credible evidence for election fraud in 2020,
right,
he's not making a claim about what is credible. He's making a claim about what he found. And if you're going to sue him for fraud or try to get him on that, you'd have to show that he didn't really find that, but actually knew better. And in that case, they did know, because there were emails where he said, right, I know this is bullshit.
That's mind reading though, right?
It isn't when you read emails. When they say it directly, it is not. So
let's just get you on the record.
If you don't have
the record for this.
No, hold on, Dylan. Don't be so clever. If they don't have the emails, try to follow my point rather than trying to refute it before I've said it. When they don't have those emails, then they can't say what the guy actually thought. They can only.
Then why did Durham do that? Then why did Durham do that? And why are you holding mind reading?
Durham just said the standards weren't met.
You understand?
Hold on, Dylan. It's the same thing as saying there was no credible evidence.
You can't keep saying
there was
hold
no
on.
Credible evidence of election. No, I'm answering your question. There was no credible evidence of that the election was stolen by the Democrats in 2020, or that the company that was charged with maybe fixing the vote had any intention or ability or did that, right? In 2020, there was no credible evidence for that claim.
That doesn't matter for anything at all. That doesn't matter for anything at all.
No, it does.
Completely irrelevant fact.
No, it is.
The reason it matters, what
matters
is
a relevant fact. I'm making a point. I'm trying to get you to see the difference here. There was no credible evidence to that effect. Tucker said that it had happened. Right.
Okay, so this is how the law
works. In order to sue him for that, they would have had to demonstrate he knew that the evidence wasn't credible. Not that the evidence wasn't credible, but that he knew.
Which is all about his state of mind.
Right. And all that Horowitz is claiming is something about his state of mind, not about the facts.
And all that Durham is claiming
is about the facts.
About the state of mind.
No, it's about the facts. He's saying, let's read it again. Page 10.
I mean, you ran away from this point for like 5 minutes. We could have just focused on this one.
I'm not running away from anything. You're running away.
Okay.
I'm
running away. I'm running away by not talking. True.
Yeah, you're by continuing to say the same thing over.
It sounds like you're aiding and abetting my running away by talking over me when I'm trying to make a point.
Go ahead.
Well, my point is that your argument relies on the idea that Durham could make this judgment, this factual judgment about whether these facts like hit the threshold. But Durham doesn't make that argument by anything except his own judgment, his own mind reading. I mean, substantiate to me. If you think you can substantiate factually without any mind reading that the facts that were used were insufficient, then go ahead and do that.
I can just put the first point is that Durham doesn't say, in my judgment, at the time, I thought. Okay, he doesn't say something like that. He says, you read it to me, and what page was that on from Durham, where he says that basically that the standards, the usual standards to open up an investigation were not met. And he recommends to the Congress that they pass legislation, create some policies where to make sure that those standards are met in the future.
But we have to talk about what that implies. It's the smuggling in again. What does that imply? That implies that the decision was made because of a bias, which is mind reading. That's the whole RUSSIAGATE thing.
No, he does.
But you're not holding up Durham. You're not holding up Durham. You're not holding up Durham. You're because you agreed with me that Durham made a soft claim. You agreed. Durham made a very
I would make
soft
it
claim.
stronger. I would make it stronger.
Well, then we have to fight about that. We have to fight about the stronger claim.
No, we don't. The main point is
Horowitz does not. You're claiming that the
point is Horowitz does not refute Durham. And Horowitz's claim cannot be used to say that the opening up a Crossfire Hurricane was justified.
I would say that neither of those things.
We know what the evidence was. You can't just talk about what Horowitz said about his thought and what they decided. We
also can't just talk about Durham in isolation either. We have to talk about the conversation we're having.
Yeah, I'm saying that the Durham. I'm making the distinction between Durham's claim, which is a claim on facts. He's making a claim about the facts.
No, it's not. Facts are not an isolation. You like Hegel, don't you? Are facts just like a magical thing that exists in the world, like magically, like we can just observe the birds?
You can make a claim about facts. And you can make a claim about your thoughts. If I say the sky is green, I'm making a claim about the sky. If I say I think the sky is green, then I'm making a claim about my thoughts.
Okay, that's very interesting. When Durham says that the factual basis was not meant,
and I'll let you talk when you don't just like brush stuff I say aside like that, and this kind of voice where like you're scoffing. If you
you're doing the same thing, so it's okay. We can.
You see the difference between a claim where I say the sky is green.
I don't see how it applies here. I don't think it applies here.
Because Horowitz was making a claim about his decision-making process, not about the actual facts that would back it.
Do you think his decision process had no facts involved? Like he was just trolling? Like
I know that the facts weren't
That's mind reading, Doug. That's mind reading. You're doing mind reading now. Why are you mind reading?
I've read the facts. It doesn't matter what he thought. I read the facts. So I think Horowitz made the decision to justify the investigation.
Based on nothing? He did it based on nothing?
Based on bad facts. I don't know how they were presented to him or whether he was tricked or not, but the facts weren't there at the beginning.
We know the facts.
Right. The facts are
that George Papadopoulos was talking to Russians about having information.
Yeah. He talked to a Russian, which is not illegal. And he talked to a Russian who claimed, and actually it wasn't even a Russian.
I agree.
Actually, he wasn't. I don't even think it really was a Russian, but he didn't have any contact with
it. Wasn't a Russian,
as far as I know.
See, but now you're denying the facts. But we thought we
no. The major fact is a barroom conversation where he said, I talked to some Russian guy who says that the Russians have dirt on Hillary Clinton is not enough of a foundation to launch
a question for you. I have a question for you. If Horowitz says this is enough factual basis to open an investigation, and Durham says it's not, how do we resolve that?
Horowitz didn't say that, though.
He did.
No, he didn't. No,
okay. Let's just pretend that he did say that. If you don't believe that, let's just pretend.
Then you have to look at what the actual standards of evidence are, as written down in the FBI manual, and what the evidence.
There probably isn't an FBI manual that's going to help us out here.
There is. Let's look.
I don't think they put their standards of evidence for every investigation they do on like a
no. There's always What? Let me just find it. Okay, is there an FBI manual?
There might be. They might have to make one to help out.
Evidence.
Kash Patel. He might need a handbook PDF.
Justify an opening an investigation. Let's just find out.
There isn't. That's the answer, but it's okay. We can.
The Attorney General's guidelines for domestic FBI operations serve as the core rule book on what constitutes sufficient justifications to initiate FBI investigations. These guidelines specify standards that agents.
I can read the standard to you, by the way. I have the standard.
Read it.
I want to know what it is.
Go ahead, read it. Let's read it.
It's a actual. Sorry, I have to open up my phone. I have the words on my phone. It is a specific and articulable fact.
Yeah.
Once again, that's it. Yeah, it turns out that investigations in law, I got to break this to you. It's really frustrating, I know. Hegel will be very disappointed. but a lot of law and like a lot of law procedure is very much vibes based. It's just some vague words.
No, let's read it again. Investigatable fact.
No, it's a specific and articulable fact, right? So what we know by that is,
okay, what was the articulable fact in that conversation? I mean, I think that's not all. There's more standards than that, right?
No, that's it. And that's what Durham said was not met. Pretty much, yeah. It's a low standard. Remember what Horowitz said. He said it's a low standard. He admitted it's a low standard in his testimony. A lot of this is a low standard. So the disagreement is that Durham says that this is not an articulable fact. This is nonsense. And Horowitz obviously believed that it was.
What's the fact that can be articulated first? But secondly, where are you finding that standard?
I wrote it down from the Durham report. I don't have the page number, so if we want to go looking for it, we can go.
I've got okay. Let's see. I've got the Attorney General's guidelines for domestic FBI operations right here in front of me. So let's see. Investigation and assessments, predicated investigations. That's page 20. Okay, so page 20. I'll look there. Only the following methods may be used in assessment. Obtain publicly available information, access and examine FBI and other Department of Justice records, and obtain information from any FBI or other department justified. Okay, this is how you can collect information. Let's go to the next part. Predicated investigations.
Okay, here is I found the part in the Durham report if you're interested in it.
So, I'm looking at the actual rule book here.
Why are you afraid of the Durham report though? I thought you liked that.
I'm not. That's not. Let's take a look at what the actual rule book says.
But he's quoting it directly. I mean, it would save time if we quote.
Okay, what does he say there? Read it again.
He said the standard for opening a full investigation is an articulable factual basis for the investigation that reasonably indicates that an activity constituting a federal crime or a threat to national security is or may be occurring, and the investigation may obtain information relating to that activity. The DIOG gives as examples of sufficient predication corroborated information from an intelligence agency stating that an individual is a member of a terrorist group, or an analyst discovers on a blog a threat to a specific home builder and additional information connecting the blogger to a known terrorist group.
Right.
Those are the examples.
So let's go through that again, because you said all it had to be was an articulable fact, right? But in fact, there was much more to it than just that.
You're right. I was dishonest. I'll put it in the chat. I'll put the quote here so we can look at it.
Okay, let's put it in the chat. Okay. An articulable factual basis for the investigation that reasonably indicates that an activity constituting a federal crime or a threat to the national security is or may be occurring. Okay. So, and the investigation may obtain. Did you cut parts out? It looks like you cut parts out there.
No, that's Durham himself did that. It's his own quote. That's
or
a direct.
Is or may be occurring, and the investigation may obtain information relating to that activity. And there's more after that. You said something about verifying.
Oh yeah, I was just that's the standard, and these are the examples he gives.
Mm-hmm.
This is directly after.
He gives us an example of a sufficient predication to open a full investigation, corroborated information from an intelligence agency stating. So first of all, the information was not corroborated from the.
These are examples. This is completely meaningless, but that's okay. Yeah.
Why is it meaningless?
Because these are just examples. Like, these are not the full scope of the law. Like, this is very basically.
The conversation was not about a crime.
It was, yeah, but there's the part where it says a threat to national security, and I think that would be the point that they're focusing on.
Okay, the conversation did not indicate a threat to national security.
Yes, it did.
How?
Being a campaign official and talking about having information relating to candidates in an election is a legitimate threat to a possible legitimate threat to national security. Absolutely.
The idea that you might get information from some other nation that would be bad for the opposing candidate is a threat to national security?
If you are cooperating with an enemy government, yes. Now we can say that these standards
there's
are
no,
messed up, but this is how the
there's
deep
no,
state operates. This is how it operates. This
I
is how
mean,
it would operate.
but there's so all right. So if Ukraine intelligence gave Hillary Clinton information, or British intelligence gave Hillary Clinton information indicating that Trump was collaborating with Putin, that would be a threat to national security.
Absolutely, and there should be an investigation. You can't arrest someone. There has to be an investigation, right? Innocent until proven guilty. The point of an investigation is you investigate. I would not support an arrest based on that evidence, but I
But the
would
Steele
support an
dossier was
investigation.
written by a former member of British intelligence, right? I mean, like, and
What does that have to do? We're not talking about that. We're
I
talking
don't
about
think
Durham
that
in Australia. But why aren't you comfortable talking about this specific case? We're talking about
I am.
Flatfire
I'm more than
Hurricane.
comfortable. It was okay. So an articulable factual basis. So the articulation is based on the conversation was what that
Well,
did
we don't know.
Papadopoulos say I am working with Russian intelligence and they are going to give me dirt, which will help undermine.
We don't know what the FBI discussed. We just don't know. Like we just don't know what exactly they discussed. But we can
We
reasonably
do actually know. We know what the evidence was that was given to the FBI.
Not what I said. What I said was we don't know why they deemed it to meet the standard. We don't know that. We don't have like the full meeting notes of like why they think it meets the standard. But we can reasonably assume, I think, that there's easily a way to say that is a investigation that could occur. There's a reasonable suspicion that would have a national security risk, as we outlined in this standard, according to the deep state's rules and procedures.
Okay, so you're saying that basically that there is no real standard because anything they just say would count as a standard. Doesn't matter.
I thought you were supposed to be the leftist here. I mean, yeah, the law is pretty vague and it can be used to do things like this. For example, we have freedom of speech, the internment camps. There was easily a legal argument to make that internment camps were illegal, and yet they were declared to be legal by the Supreme Court at the time because the state was able to articulate within the bounds of the law a legal argument. That's just how it works. The law is very complicated. It's for any of us who like philosophy. It is very frustrating, but it is very vague and arbitrary. It just is.
So here's I got the manual in front of me. A full investigation may be initiated if there's an articulable factual basis for the investigation that reasonably indicates that a circumstance described in paragraph 3A and B exists. Let's go to that. 3A and B. An activity constituting a federal crime or a threat to national security has or may have occurred, is or may be occurring, or will or may occur, and the investigation may obtain information relating to the activity or the involvement or role of an
That's exactly what we quoted, yeah.
Organization
exactly what I quoted
in such activity. B, an individual, group, organization, entity, information, property, or activity is or may be a target of attack, victimization, acquisition, infiltration, or recruitment. So, in connection with
interesting that Durham left that out. That's a little bit strange.
Federal law or a threat to national security, and the investigation may obtain information that would help to protect against such activity or threat. So you're saying that let's look at what I want to find the actual quote from the ambassador from Australia, but I won't waste the time on it. You're saying that when he said, "I've heard Russia has some dirt on Hillary Clinton, and we're surely going to win. Trump's surely going to win." That is evidence that a federal crime or threat to national security has or may have been has occurred. Yes. And the threat to national security is that information from Russia might come out that hurts Hillary Clinton's campaign.
No, it doesn't have to be that. It could also be that this guy is going to become a Russian ascent. You know what's really interesting about the investigation, the quote you read, you actually gave me more ammunition because it mentions that there could be a risk to that person, meaning there could have been a fear, actually, not about Hillary Clinton, but that by Papadopoulos dealing with Russia, because he's some random idiot probably, that he would get intertwined with Russian intelligence. They would have dirt on him, and he would become a national security threat for Trump. Like that would actually be a threat to the government, even if Trump was in office. So actually, even if you're like a MAGA Republican, you should want that to be investigated so that you can make sure that all George here isn't going to ruin Trump's chances. He might ruin Trump's whole government if he ends up being corrupt. You don't want that to be the case. So again, from the deep state standards, it's absolutely legitimate, I think, that they would want to investigate that and make sure that old George boy, this Georgie boy, isn't compromising Trump or Clinton. I think that's completely reasonable under the deep state standards.
Okay. Well, I don't believe you do think that's reasonable. I think you were saying that in this context, but from my perspective, okay.
Why would I not believe that?
I don't, because that standard is basically means anything could be used to justify full-scale FBI investigation. It doesn't have to be corroborated. It doesn't have to. You can speculate invent, fantasize about potential consequences.
Speculate. Well, that's fine. I'm okay with investigations happening. I'm okay. We both want openness and transparency, right? Like, I'm okay with more investigations happening. That's fine. If they want to invest Hunter Biden on nothing like they did, that's totally fine. Like, go ahead, do it. I don't care. Do it. Like, just investigate if you think there's a threat to national security. Under the deep states, that might be a problem in like an ideal society, but under the threat to national security, the threat to the people who are going to be running the state, it makes perfect sense that you'd investigate on a low standard, especially when Russia is involved. The reality is, if you ever like immigrate to the US from Russia, they're on you. They're like, why are you coming into our country? You're Russian. Why? I know of someone who's like, I don't know them personally, but their wife is Russian, and they had to go through a lot of this. Like, it's a weird. Our government, and we can say it's wrong, but our government is very not uneasy about Russia. Like, they're an enemy. They are treated as an enemy. They are treated with immense suspicion. That just wouldn't be the case for other countries. But I would even say, even with other countries, I would say, you know what, fine, you want to investigate it. Maybe this guy's a British asset. Again, it's not treated the same way because the UK is not an enemy. But I would still say go for it if you think that's a national security threat. Like, it makes sense that we don't want to have compromise. This is a very basic realpolitik government thing. You don't want spies, basically. You don't want people in your apparatus who could be compromised, even if they're not wanting to be compromised. It could be an innocent guy. George could be the nicest guy in the world, and he just gets himself into trouble, as happens in the real world, and then all of a sudden Trump is compromised. Like, I mean, that's just how it goes. If I found out that a Democrat was talking to China about stuff like this, I would say, please investigate that. Like, do investigate that. Absolutely. Now, if Trump just threw them in prison automatically, I would have rejected that. But the investigation, absolutely not. No, you have to investigate that. Sure, yeah, go for it.
Okay. Listen, let's leave it there.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. This was an interesting conversation.